surfing means so much to me. I shape so many of my decisions around it, based on being able to keep freedom and have a lifestyle that allows me to surf when the waves are good and be in a place where I can enjoy that year round. Yeah, it's my salvation and my playground, and gives me so much.
Welcome back to the Surf Mastery Podcast. I am your host, Michael Frampton. That was a quote from today's guest, Captain Liz Clark. This is her book here. It's called Swell. Liz Clark, she was a 2001 NSA Women's Champion, and she set out on a solo adventure to travel through the Pacific on a sailboat called Swell. And this was back in 2005. I think she embarked on that journey, and this book came out of that, and she tells some of the stories and lessons, etc., during today's episode. So that book is called Swell. You can check more about Liz at swellvoyage.com, and of course her Instagram, Captain Liz Clark. Links to all that stuff in the show notes. Sponsor for today's podcast episode is Flat Rock Wetsuits. I have been loving mine. I've got a 3.2 Savo that I've been using here in the New Zealand winter, and it's been great. It is hands down the most comfortable wetsuit I've ever worn. It is so soft and silky, and it is leagues ahead of a needs essential, and nowhere near as pricey as some of the other big brand names. And they are giving my listeners a discount on any order using the code MASTER15. That's MASTER15. So that's flatrockwetsuits.com.au. It's an Australian-based company, but they do ship internationally. So go ahead and check them out. And there's been a few donations for the show coming through the PayPal, through my website, surfmastery.com. So thank you so much for that. The whole PayPal thing had to be reset with the new website. So if you were a previous regular donator, you'd set that up. That would have fallen away. So if you can go ahead and reinstate that on the new website, that'd be awesome. And of course, anyone can make a one-off donation, which helps the show so much. So thank you so much for those who have donated. And as you noticed, there's been quite a few episodes recently, and I've got another 6 or so in the bag. And the more donations that come through, the faster I can pump them out. And of course, get more guests, etc. Love to hear your feedback on the show. Make a comment on Instagram or YouTube, or send me an email, mike@surfmastery.com. Always interested to hear your thoughts and guest recommendations, any surfing questions you have, and that would be great. But without further ado, I shall fade in my conversation with Captain Liz Clark. Yeah, what a phenomenal story that you have. Quite the journey you've been on.
Thank you. Yes.
Do you remember your first wave, your first surf?
I do. I was in high school. I think I was a freshman in high school, so 15. And I had a friend who was a surfer, and she offered to take me out on her board one day, and we just stayed in the whitewater the whole time. And I don't even think I stood up all the way, but I got the feeling of the glide and just being out there in the ocean, which was something I already loved so much. And yeah, I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked.
So now, what does surfing mean to you now?
Surfing means so much to me. I shape so many of my decisions around it, based on being able to keep freedom and have a lifestyle that allows me to surf when the waves are good and be in a place where I can enjoy that year round, yeah, it's my salvation and my playground, and gives me so much. Mhm.
Mm. How would you describe your relationship to the ocean?
My relationship to the ocean. I mean, the ocean has given me so much. When you think back to uh when I think back to my youth, and just how the ocean was always a place that I could go to feel at peace and accepted, always kind of a medium where I felt like I could be myself. Um, and then, of course, when I spent 10 years, more than a decade, and thousands of miles traveling the ocean on my sailboat, the ocean gave me so many challenges, and was a place where I was forced to grow in so many ways that, um, yeah, our relationship it's something of like love and respect, and a healthy amount of fear, but um, there's so much more to gain than to fear, in my opinion. So something I keep going back to all the time to feel good, to stay inspired, to keep feeling a purpose in my life. And so, yeah, I'm very close to the ocean and hope that I will get to continue to be.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned fear. When it comes to the ocean, what is your biggest fear?
Um, I've learned to kind of calculate my risks, in my 40s now. I used to kind of fling myself madly at um, my ocean escapades, but now I tend to use a bit more calculated risk when it involves surfing and long distance voyaging or sailing adventures. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't really, to be honest, focus on the scariest parts. So I don't really even know what I would fear the most. I try to focus on the good parts, and I think that's always served me.
Obviously, yeah. Because I mean, setting out on a solo voyage in your early, was it your 20s?
Hmm.
Yeah. Like there's so much, like a young woman by herself on a secondhand boat, like to surf reef passes, like injuries, pirates, like the list of risks is insane. Like what gave you the nous to set across such upon such a voyage? Like where did that come from?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know. It's almost like it was born and instilled into me, always, because I had the experience of growing up on boats and getting a taste of that, pleasure of seeing the world by boat as a young child. But you know neither my brother or my sister ever had quite the same desire as I did to continue that, and live it out in such a way that I did. So I don't really know exactly where it came from, but it the determination to do it and the desire was always just such a huge part of my world, and I didn't really question why. And yeah, the risks, I knew what the risks were, and people were constantly telling me and talking about them, especially in the several years that I spent preparing the boat for the voyage. There was just constantly people telling me why this was not a good idea, and kind of naysaying it. And um, I think there was deep down, I really knew that there was more to gain than to lose, and that those risks were going to be like part of the fun at that age. I was really I loved the idea of adventure and unknown and kind of just going without a plan. So um, at that time, there was parts of that that appealed to me. What really I feared, I think most as I set out was failure, like failing my job as a captain. And I had all these big expectations and I'd had so many people that helped me and whether it was financially or, sweat, blood and tears, um, there was just a lot riding on me pulling it all off. And so that was the biggest fear was just that I couldn't perform as a captain or you know, fulfill those duties or things that I needed to do to be successful at the voyage.
Mm. Well, how do you define the word captain, and what would have failure looked like?
I mean, captain, I define as being able to manage your ship safely, to be able to, deliver your passengers safely to the other side. At the beginning of the voyage, I was always with different crew and friends who had very little boating experience. And so there was a lot of responsibility on me to make sure everybody stayed safe and understood the basics of, you know, what the risks were of being out there on the ocean. So yeah, I think that's my definition of being a captain or being a good captain. Um, and I would have defined failure at that point as, running the boat aground on the reef or, in a way that it would have been like unrepairable damage to swell or, just deciding it was all too scary for me and I didn't want to do it. Um, giving up in some kind of way like that.
Mm. Yeah, so having to be rescued, basically.
Yeah, yeah. Mm, sinking or running aground would have been really, really, for me, it would have been a big, sad ending to a beautiful thing.
Mm. The subtitle to the book is a sail a sailing surfer's voyage of awakening. That sounds it's quite a spiritual subtitle. What do you mean by awakening? And describe what that means to you. What's that journey of awakening?
Yeah, I think it means many things. To me, it meant both awakening in terms of me discovering myself and knowing who I am as a person, as a woman. Um, that was a huge part of the journey. And then also kind of an awakening um, to the realities of the world and um, understanding my place in it. A connection as well to my spirituality and um, like a deeper understanding of my place in the universe. All of those things were kind of like an unexpected part um, of what I did. I really set out kind of with just the idea that I was, going out there to find remote waves and surf these breaks and have fun. And, there was just so much more to it. When I actually got out there, I learned that to be able to succeed at what I was doing, it was really important for me to be able to look within and remove any of those obstacles that were blocking me from being kind of like in alignment with the greater forces of the world. Because when you're out there, you're so vulnerable and so dependent on nature and the ocean to kind of cooperate with you, um, that it really became apparent that, my inner journey and my outer world had uh, connected in a really important way. And that, doing the work within, I would be rewarded in in the physical world, and externally, I guess.
What is
Uh,
doing the work within? What do you mean by that?
I think I mean looking within and seeing how I could be a better person, recognizing self-awareness, basically. Um, you know, there's always things that we don't see being ourselves, and that it takes it took me time alone on the ocean, with lots of time to reflect and really think about who I was and who I wanted to be able to kind of like do that inner work, do that job of of looking at things maybe you don't like about yourself or you want to do better at, and kind of put them into play in your everyday life.
Hmm. I'm assuming you're talking about in regards to other, like your relationship with other people.
Definitely, but I think my relationship with myself as well, um, you know, yes, definitely with other people. There was a point in my voyage where I wanted to make amends with everybody that I felt that I'd wronged in my life, and, wrote letters to different people that I wanted to apologize to or clarify something with. But there was also an ongoing relationship with myself that needed attention, and um, you know, me discovering my power as a woman, as a person, depended so heavily on me um, being able to be confident and learn to love myself, really. And that wasn't something that came naturally to me. um I was kind of I never thought that I deserved um maybe as much as other people did, and so it took me time to kind of develop my self-worth, I guess I would say.
Hmm. Interesting. And you mentioned the connection between the inner and outer worlds. Could you think of a literal example, like for maybe when you were feeling a bit more self-worth and calmness, was was the ocean calmer at the time?
I don't think it was so directly visible, but I think uh over time I understood that my not only my calmness but my attitude towards things, like during this voyage, being on a boat, things are constantly breaking. I think there's just always challenges, and at the beginning I tended to very quickly get frustrated and want to throw my arms up and be like, oh, this is, why are things never going my way? Um, and then, at some point I kind of realized, like, if I don't find a way to see these challenges as opportunities, or, at least try to like stay calm and accept that this is absolutely going to be constantly part of my reality on this journey, like I would have given up within the first year, like it, I had to transform my way of thinking about those challenges in order to, you know, find positivity in them, because it would have just been constantly too hard. So I think over time, as I began to understand that connection of me just, feeling frustrated, and it would almost always get just worse if I reacted in that way to a problem or a difficult person that came into my life. If I, you know, resisted it and made a bigger fuss out of it, it always ended up being more challenging. And so I think, over time, as I realized, like, okay, I've got to just, consider this busted, windlass motor, a chance to maybe meet some interesting people that are gonna help me fix it, or I found that over time, the challenges did lead me to really cool experiences if I could keep an open mind. And so I think it wasn't so overnight that I said, "Oh, I'm calm and the ocean's calm." No, the ocean was always throwing new challenges at me. It was just uh more a matter of like me seeing alignment between going with the flow in those moments and letting them lead me towards somewhere that maybe I didn't have in mind, and then getting there and having a really cool surprise happen. Going to having the wind push me in a direction that I didn't originally think I want to go, for example, and then getting to a place that I would have never gone to initially, and discovering something really cool when I got there.
Mm.
Does that make sense? I kind of rambled on,
Yeah,
but
no, I like that. And it's also, I think that part of you was also very present before you set out on the journey. Because do you see that in hindsight?
I mean, I think it was probably always there. I think being out on the ocean, um, and kind of like, especially when I was sailing alone, just like the noise was gone and I could hear myself better and I could think clearer, and um, you know, kind of it just accelerated the process of me having those realizations and understandings, I think, being in the environment that I was out on the ocean.
Mm. Yeah, because I mean, setting out on such a voyage at such a young age and ignoring all of the challenges and the people who are pointing out the barriers and challenges, there's certainly an element of faith that led you to do it anyway.
Definitely. I I certainly had a confidence in myself, uh, um, a confidence in my capability to, you know, problem solve and overcome obstacles that would come up. Um, maybe to almost uh, a scary degree. My parents might have thought that, um, but yeah, I think I always have been a reflective person, and always someone who wanted to try to improve and do better, and be a good person. So whatever that means to you, for me, being out there seemed to definitely accelerate the opportunities to have that inner growth
Mm,
in those revelations. Yeah.
yeah. Did you ever encounter any pirates?
No, no real actual pirates. Um, no, but definitely plenty of unpleasant men and situations that, I had to avoid, or, be smart and
Mm-hmm.
get, you know, I was pretty hyper aware of those kinds of dangers. I'd say I was, I think those were the scariest things to me at that point, was encountering dangerous men, or people more powerful than me that could do harm. I didn't overthink it, or concentrate on it too much, but I definitely learned to tune into my instincts, and when I met someone that it didn't feel, that gave me an uncomfortable feeling, right away I would remove myself from the situation and do what I needed to do to not be in their path again.
Mm, yeah.
Mm.
So you had a few close calls in that regard?
I mean, I had, yeah, definitely some moments that I wouldn't want to relive if I didn't have to, but in general, I think I was pretty smart about it. I always, when I got to a new place, um, I kind of quickly met, you always met people, generally upon arrival somewhere. The boating community is really small and, tended to um, stick with people who I felt safe with. And, already creating that little bubble of people who are kind of looking out for me was, I feel like a really good way to, avoid problems.
Mm. Do you think it was a rite of passage in a way?
The journey itself,
Yeah.
absolutely. I don't think young people have the same opportunities for that kind of experience in today's world, or we don't, focus on it as much as certainly some civilizations and peoples did in the past. And I do think I just see the value in it so much, after having done what I did in my 20s. I see young people not getting that opportunity or giving themselves that opportunity, and um in that age group. And I think I wish that our society did more to say, like, it's important for you to go out and spread your wings and fall if you have to and get back up, and especially at that age, because you're really forging who you are. You're learning yourself. You're setting yourself up for the decisions you're going to make and the life path that you're going to choose, you know, ahead of you. So, um, yeah, I believe I didn't intend it as a rite of passage really at the time, but it absolutely was that. Um, Looking back,
Mm. Yeah. Tell me, what are your thoughts on flow states?
well, um, I think they're a really beautiful thing, and we're lucky when we find ourselves in those moments where things flow. And I definitely think that we can, like I'm saying, in terms of how our inner alignment affects our outer world, when everything, when we're making choices and doing things to keep our inner world, healthy and feeling good, I do think that that is reflected externally in how things kind of happen around us, and definitely lead us towards being in flow state more often. Um, I don't think we can be there all the time,
Mm.
but I think uh, that's what makes it so special, and keeps us, aiming to tune back in uh, and get aligned, and try to find those special flow state moments again.
Mm. Yeah, because I imagine if you're been sailing and you're tired and then you turn up to some reef pass and it's just pumping, it kind of has to be surfed, and that the pressure of that situation would elicit a deep flow state, I imagine.
Yeah, sometimes I think it would elicit the opposite, because there was times when I would get somewhere and I was exhausted, after uh a long passage, and the surf would be good, and I would force myself to go out there when actually my body and everything was telling me, you need to rest, you know? Um, and I was constantly in conflict because the boat and the safety of the boat had to always remain first priority. When in my heart, like, I was a surfer and I wanted to just jump off that boat and go surfing sometimes, but a lot of times that couldn't be that couldn't be my reality. I had to deal with um the priority of keeping the boat safe first.
Mm.
Mhm.
Interesting. Did you make some mistakes where you put surfing ahead of your own instincts?
Absolutely. Especially at the beginning. I left my boat unattended in some bay and would go off hitchhiking to find waves, and um, end up meeting some nice people and spend the night somewhere. And luckily for me, I never had any big problems. I never got too big of a consequence from some of those decisions that I made. But I I definitely, there was a learning curve at the beginning where I was like, I would get back, and I remember in Puerto Escondido, um, I'd left the boat at anchor, gone on a little surf mission for a couple of days, and came back. And when we pulled up the anchor to leave, the rope must have been, the anchor road had been chafing on something on the bottom, and there was just like a tiny bit of
Oh,
rope left holding it, So I had those moments where I got really close to disaster and learned that I had to keep my priorities straight if I wanted to avoid a crisis.
yeah. What's Can you remember a day or a spot where you got the best waves?
I mean, I got so many good waves. Um, but there was a lot of time where, there'd be long stints in between sometimes because, I'd be stuck somewhere fixing something, and be in a port with dirty water where there was no surf around, and then, but I think that's what made those experiences, when I finally did get, when all the elements came together, and there was a safe anchorage and the waves were on, and I had somebody fun to surf with, and it just made it so precious. Those experiences had to be so earned that they were sacred. um yeah, so lots and lots of good waves out there. Just a matter of going out and getting off the beaten path. And I think sometimes in today's world, I feel like when we have it too easy, we do lose that depth of appreciation that does make something so special. And that, yeah, that can kind of affect our experience in a way.
Yeah, I agree. Pressure makes diamonds.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is was
Yeah.
surfing the driving force behind the trip itself, or was it bigger than that?
I think it was I think it was one of the principal driving forces. I think I also had this um, very deep desire to live really close to nature, and simplify and kind of get away from this modern world that didn't always make sense to me. Um, I always, from a young child, wanted to protect nature and was an environmentalist, and really wanted to go out there and try to experience a life where I could have a lower impact, and um, you know, live in alignment with my values in that way. And so I saw this journey as kind of a way to escape what I didn't like about the modern world, and, you know, live those principles that I believed in.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, surfing was absolutely like a huge priority for me as well.
mm-hmm. In 2001, you were the NSSA College Women's National Surfing Champ. So
Yeah.
so you've experienced competition surfing at a high level, and then you've also experienced what I would argue probably the purest form of surfing, which is adventure and just surfing for the sake of surfing. So you've never chosen the easy path.
No, I never really have. And was so determined to get better at surfing in my teens, and I didn't come from a family of surfers. I didn't have any real like role models and close to me that could teach me to surf better. And so competition was a good way in my um late teens and 20s to, I felt like, improve my surfing, and and meet other surfers and be part of the surf scene. But in the end, after I won that competition, I think I realized a few things. I realized that my love for surfing was more about those exploratory experiences. What I loved being out there and, you know, going through nature, like whether it was like sliding down a muddy hill or, wondering what a certain break was gonna be like on a certain tide and going for that adventure and figuring it out. I definitely found myself lighting up more in those moments than, competition started to feel stressful and not as fun, I guess. So, and I also kind of realized like without a surfing background, like without that in my family, um, I don't know, the surfing world at that time, especially as a woman, seemed like you needed a lot of support. You needed to know people. It was kind of like a who's who thing at that point as well. And I didn't have that. And I thought, you know, pursuing professional surfing is going to be really hard for me with the background that I have. So, um, yeah. And it seemed like, especially when the opportunity presented itself and this mentor came into my life who wanted to offer me this boat, it was like I can use all of this experience that I have growing up on boats, combine it with my love for exploratory surfing, and this is just like the the epitome of my voyaging dreams and my surfing dreams coming together.
Mm, yeah. What's some advice for surfers listening who want to improve their surfing? And I don't necessarily mean that by only a performance perspective. I think people want to get better at surfing, not just so they can. I mean, part of it is, yes, you want to be able to surf more difficult waves, catch more waves. But I think it's also people's desire to improve their surfing uh, is really to improve their relationship with surfing itself. So, what advice would you give to surfers listening out there?
I think my biggest advice would be to keep remembering that it's all about enjoying yourself and having fun, and that no matter if you're, you know, surfing more difficult waves or improving in the way that, the surf world deems as a better surfer, I think focusing it on going out there to enjoy yourself and remembering the benefits of just being in the ocean, using your body physically, the camaraderie of meeting other surfers. I think those are the important things to remember. I used to be so hard on myself if I didn't have a good session. And um, once I kind of set off on the voyage and had this much more pure experience of surfing, I let go of a lot of those expectations on myself and really started to focus in on like doing it because it feels just so great. And when you do end up having one of those moments of improvement or when things come together for you, it's just so wonderful. But focusing too hard on, putting too much pressure on yourself can often backfire and make it less enjoyable and even cause you to, not improve quickly because you're feeling negative, about yourself or the
Mm,
situation.
yeah, I think the letting go aspect uh, increases the chance of a flow state. And really, the deeper you get into a flow state is when time slows down and you read the wave at a better level, and therefore you surf better. And the more,
Absolutely.
yeah, and the more of those states you enter over time, the better your surfing gets overall.
Yeah. It's so much more about your connection to the ocean and, um, you know, like take, for example, the surfing of Leah Dawson, you think about she just breaks all the rules and does it her way, and that's what makes it so special. Um, and in my opinion, she's one of the best women surfers there is. But yeah, so I think just yeah, bringing your own charisma, your own personality into it, and finding what feels good and enjoying it, um, is
Mm,
really the way to go.
yeah. No, I agree. Karina Razunko comes to mind. Like she's such a free spirit in the way she surfs. Always looks like she's in a flow state. Very unique.
Yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah.
How often do you surf nowadays?
As often as I can, which ends up being probably 3 to 4 times a week.
Yeah.
Mm,
Awesome. And you're based in
yeah.
Tahiti now?
Hmm. Yeah. And
Was
luckily
that
for us,
was that
there's
the was that the
generally,
was that the pick of the like after all your travels around the Pacific, was that your like highlight?
yeah, I fell in love with French Polynesia for a lot of reasons, and waves were definitely on that list. But also, yeah, the people and the culture here. And um, yeah, I met my now husband. And so there was a lot of things that have kept me here. But
Hmm.
yeah, the quality of the surf is so good. And I ended up, wanting to stay here longer because at the time I was like, I'm only going to be able to surf waves of this level for so long. And it's funny because now I'm 44 and I'm surfing better than I ever have. And um, it's all relative. It's all about staying healthy and staying continuing to enjoy it. And yeah, my relationship with surfing it always, like anything, has its ups and downs, or it's moments where things plateau and you don't feel the same inspiration as you always have before. And um but yeah, I'm at a really good place with surfing right now. It remains a huge source of uh re-inspiration and repowering for me. Doing a ton of community activism and work here, for the environment and for animals. And I do give all that energy all the time. And then, when the waves turn on, it's like, okay, it's my turn, it's my time. I need to go fill my cup back up. And it really helps keep me going, um, to be able to give.
Mm, awesome. Well, you mentioned just surfing better now than ever at 44. What do
Mhm.
you put that down to?
Maybe just time and good waves. Um, but also for sure taking care of my body, eating healthy, yoga, um, all of those things have allowed me to, stay physically fit enough to um, keep doing it at the level that I'm doing it. So yeah, a combination of all those things, I guess.
Mm, yeah, I think traveling to good tropical locations with good uncrowded waves is probably the best thing you can do for your surfing, both, you know, to get better and just to experience surfing the way it should be.
Yeah, and I think too for me, all those years while I was living on Swell, and the boat was my main residence, I always had the boat as like the focal point. Like I said before, it just had to be the priority. And in the last since 2018, late 2018, I moved onto land and have a land base, and have been able to kind of like put more time into surfing, uh, which has really allowed me to not kind of like stay at that same level where I would get to do it just enough to feel something again and make an improvement, but also, like go back out soon and just be able to improve quicker because I'm my focus can be more right on that versus, oh, this thing's broken and take I got to take the boat to this other island to do this or that. And always some sort of complication of living on the ocean.
Mm, yeah, I can imagine. Did you back to your voyage? Did you take books with you?
Oh yes, tons of books stuffed into all the compartments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you had to choose only three of those books to recommend to others, what would they be?
Hmm. Um, okay, let's see. Top three books. I would say maybe in terms of like self-growth and self-awareness, I would choose The Four Agreements by Don Ruiz Miguel. Um, Adventure books, I think it would be between the book Audrey Sutherland wrote called Paddling Your Own Canoe. I love that book. I love her story. And I also really love The Long Way by Bernard Moitessier. It's more of a sailing book, but his way of describing his relationship with the ocean and the way he kind of like rebels against society. I saw a lot of parallels in our journey and really related to his story. I just recently read a book that I love called Hawaii Rising. It's the story um, of the Hokulea and the how Polynesian navigation was kind of rediscovered through Nainoa Thompson, and how they you know, built this traditional sailing canoe and um, did the journey to Tahiti. And it's so incredible just learning how they rediscovered the use of the stars as a and the sky as a chart. It was fascinating.
Mm.
Highly recommend it. Mm.
Oh, cool. Thanks for those recommendations. I'll make sure they're in the show notes.
Oh.
I wanted to ask you, you sort of mentioned it before, femininity. How would you define that word, and how has the definition of it changed since you left Santa Barbara all those years ago?
Hmm. Well, I think growing up in Southern California, I had this impression that femininity had to be a certain way, and that beauty in general and femininity kind of were wrapped up in this one sort of way that women were supposed to look. And when I got out on my voyage, it took me years to break down those principles in my mind. It was so ingrained in me that femininity equaled like pink dresses and big boobs and um, lipstick and the things that are traditionally kind of uh, associated with femininity, uh, and to understand my own version of femininity and to allow myself to not only explore that but like validate it to myself what femininity could look like, and being in places way off the beaten path where women weren't, that those things, those ideals weren't ingrained into them at all, and their confidence and beauty. I began to see femininity in a new light through a lot of these women that I met out in these really remote places, and see that it has so much more to do with your confidence and owning yourself and what you love. Um and so yeah, being able to start incorporating those ideas into my own definition and version of femininity man, it meant, it changed my life so much to accept that, I wasn't the girl who wanted to wear frilly dresses, but I was am feminine in such a beautiful way, and the femininity that is part of me is what allowed me to kind of slow down and embrace nature in a way that maybe you know the more masculine side of me never really allowed myself to, because I thought that, especially trying to go out there and be a captain and live in this very male oriented world of being a boat owner and even a surfer, these were male dominated scenes that I was kind of pushing myself into, and I thought I had to be masculine to succeed and to fit in. And when I allowed myself to uh, embrace my style of femininity, I think it really it allowed me to succeed and be proud of myself in a new way that definitely, changed the way I sailed, changed the way I surfed, and made my life a lot more enjoyable because I embraced really who I am.
Wow, I love that. So the subtitle is Sailing Surfer's Voyage of Awakening. It's very apt, but it's not just, it's sort of awakening in many aspects: spiritually, relationships, your relationship with the ocean and surfing, your,
Mhm.
you talk about your diet and how it's affected your health, or it's a very broad, it's an awesome book. There's so much in it. Just as we finish off, let me ask you, if there was one piece of advice that from this book that you could give to your younger self, what would that be?
I think it would be to embrace those obstacles as opportunities, embrace challenges as something to learn from, um, embrace difficult people as your chance to practice your virtues. All of those. It's kind of the same kernel right there, which would have allowed me to avoid a lot of pain and frustration as a young person, I think. um, and really to just be myself and love myself and embrace who I am, no matter what other people thought, and don't compare myself to others as much.
Yeah. Nice. I love that. So swellvoyage.com, is that the best place for people to find out more about you?
Yeah, they can find out about me there, and as well on Instagram at Captain Liz Clark.
Awesome. Well, Liz, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to chat with Surf Mastery and my listeners. Yeah, I will have links to all of that stuff in the show notes for listeners. And yeah, I'd encourage everyone to read the book and follow you on Instagram. And do you have any adventures coming up? What's next?
Well, I'm currently undertaking an adventure to spay and neuter all the dogs on the island where I'm living, dogs and cats. My nonprofit is undertaking, yeah, a big campaign this year to reduce the overpopulation and animal suffering here on this island. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I've kind of shifted my adventure into community activism, and for the moment, I don't have like a big sailing venture on the horizon, but um, yeah, I'm really enjoying this really different sort of adventure, having to work with others and work with the government, the municipality, and its challenges in a whole new way. So
Yeah.
it's great.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Liz, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the invite and the nice questions. Appreciate it.